this is Ruth Theresa with One Inspiring Woman, and today I'm going to kind of give you the background story and way more information than you ever thought you needed about eclipses, because it is dramatic. It is just kind of insightful. And when I was reading these couple of articles, and I kind of put 2 or 3 or 4 of these together, and that's kind of the cool part, is just literally putting this information together and kind of like, how do eclipses really change our world? And it's really amazing, and I am hopefully going to give you a lot of insight and a lot of information, so hang on. So one of the interesting things about eclipse energy is it happens about every 6 months or so. So we always have one in the spring, and then we always have one in the fall. And then sometimes, because they kind of shift and they're not on exactly on the same schedule, sometimes some years we have 3 sets of eclipses, or sometimes we'll have like 2.5. So we'll have 2 full eclipses and then part 1 in our year and then part in the next year. So it's kind of really an interesting phenomenon that happens. And it's really kind of one of the things that I've really started to understand. And then I found these like 3 or 4 articles that really just kind of like cemented it, like, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. So I couldn't wait to do this video for you. I'm even filming on a day that's not my normal filming day, because I was like, yes, this is amazing, interesting energy to understand, and kind of getting the background story on eclipse energy. So it's kind of one of those, eclipse energy is meant to kind of uproot us, to kind of give us like a new perspective, kind of pushing our energy in some areas that we may kind of go, I'm not so interested in going into. So that's kind of one of those like wonderful, interesting energies. And it's kind of like, because they happen so often, we're almost always in an eclipse energy. Maybe not the height like right afterwards, but we're always in that little bit, because they happen every 6 months or so. So it's kind of like, here we go again, here we go again. And that's kind of one of those interesting energies that it's kind of meant for us to pay attention to. And a lot of times things that happen close to an eclipse, we kind of just think of it, it's like, it's no big deal. But it really is. It's kind of like our universe, our creator energy, kind of giving us a little kick in the head once in a while and go, you got to move. And so because you're not willing to move, I'm going to move things around you so that you'll feel like you just have to move, like you have to move. You have to get into this energy and keep going. So kind of each year, you might pay special attention to like an eclipse, like, you know, like, oh, it's going to be in my area. I'll be able to go outside and look at it, or I'm going to drive somewhere. A lot of people drive different distances to go see an eclipse, to kind of like be in that energy. But I will tell you that kind of the more interesting thing is, no matter where you are in the world, no matter if the eclipse is visible from where you're at or it's not, it's one of those, even if it's on the opposite side of the world from where you are, an eclipse energy is going to affect everybody. It's like a full moon or a new moon. They affect everybody. It's one of those, that energy comes down. So even if you're not where that full moon is happening at that exact moment, it's one of those, that energy really kind of circulates around our earth. Same thing with an eclipse. That energy circulates all around. So a lot of times we have this amazing eclipse energy, and it kind of comes in a couple of like ways of doing this. So kind of one of the interesting things is they come in like a family set. So you'll have different signs, and they're always opposite each other on the wheel. So you'll have different ones in different areas. And like I said, and they're about 6 months apart. And so it's kind of one of those, like, you'll have a family come in pairs. So so for about 18 months to 24 months, we'll have like the same signs in the eclipse energy. So that's kind of like, okay, interesting. And a lot of times what it's doing is giving each set of people every so many years an opportunity to make big changes, to make big, drastic, oh my gosh, I'm making a change in my life changes. It's kind of like pushing you. Are you willing to make some changes now? So kind of once that family sign is finished, it will take about 7 to 8 years for it to come back. So it kind of gives you a break. So for about 18 months to 2 years, it'll be kind of pushing your sign of like, make these changes, do all of this, that sort of thing. And then it kind of gives you 7 to 8 years to kind of like settle down and relax and that sort of thing and kind of get back into it. And then it comes again. So it kind of gives each of us an opportunity to make some huge changes, to come in with some amazing energy and give us really new opportunities. So we're going to talk all about that and kind of how like understanding eclipse energy will help us kind of like understand the big events in our life. And a lot of times what I've done is kind of like when I was reading these articles, like went back in my life and kind of like when the eclipses happened and they were in my sign, it was like, ooh, that's when the big changes happen. That's when all of this happened. And that's kind of that really like that deeper understanding. So that's kind of the big one is understanding when eclipses come in, they bring in big news. It's one of those, it could bring in birth of a baby. It could bring in a marriage. It could bring in an engagement, a career opportunity, kind of like a huge promotion. It's going to be something important, some type of breakthrough in your life, something like major, not just like, oh, I went to, Colorado for the 15th time this year, in the last 10 years. No. This is like major travel that you're going like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful place in the world. Or I felt so connected to this part of the world. I really got a chance to really like clear out my spirit here and kind of just like really focus on what's happening. You will also have an opportunity during this time frame to possibly make some really vital changes. This could be if you have a business, you started a business. This could also bring in like signing new contracts, kind of this energy of like pushing this in some amazing ways to push you kind of like past where you thought you could go. Kind of like, okay, here we're going even faster than we thought. It can also bring up like a sale of a house, a move across the country, any of those things, like huge things. Bringing in a pet to the family. It could come in surgery. It could come in some important kind of like health developments. And so that's kind of one of those amazing energies of like, wow, I didn't even realize that it could affect all of this, but it really does. The planets affect us. The eclipses affect us because they're right on top of us. And it's kind of, that's the cool part. And so how it affects you is going to make a difference in what sign you're in and which ones are you connected, like what's your rising sign, what's your ascendant sign, all of those things. Eclipses often bring in divorces as well, because a lot of times like it's highlighting that you're ready to make some changes and maybe your partner or spouse is not ready to make the same changes or support you as you make the changes. I will tell you that it's kind of like that change of energy, and it could also come in with long-term friends. It's any long-term relationship, and usually a marriage is a long-term. We hope it's long-term, and so you're ready to make some changes and some upgrades, but your partner isn't, and so that can bring in a lot of this like stuck energy of like you're ready to make some changes and you're realizing like this person isn't ready to make the same changes I am. So that can really bring in like, okay, we're coming to a turning point, like they want to make changes and I don't want that, or I'm ready to make changes and they don't want that. So it's kind of like, okay, here we go. And that just highlights like this isn't working. And so it's highlighting in some areas like what isn't happening for you or how things are kind of that energy of it, depending on like the energy of that eclipse, how is that going to affect you? So it's kind of like one of those, wow. I will kind of say the second one is all eclipses bring something to an end and start something else, because that's the only way to do things. That's kind of really the only way for life to happen. It's one of those, there's always an ending of a chapter and a beginning of a chapter. And the end of a chapter could be, I've graduated high school and now I'm going to college. It could be, I've graduated college and now I'm going into the workforce. It could be, I'm ending my single life and getting into a relationship. Or I've been in married life and now we're kind of moving, separating or divorcing. interesting. So that's kind of like the end of one thing. Even in moving in houses, it's like the end of the story in this house and kind of opening up a new chapter in a new house. So that's kind of like really amazing. So during an eclipse energy, you're going to have like major life changes, especially if it's in your sign. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So yet sometimes we don't always see it that way until it actually happens. And a lot of times, like for me, it wasn't until I was looking back in the history of kind of like, when did we have all of this energy happen, or when did I make those big changes? It was like, oh, it was usually within a few weeks or a month of an eclipse happening in my sign. So it's like, I know, I was like flabbergasted. So we can kind of really never go back. It's one of those, it's kind of like, I've heard the sayings many times, it's like you can never go back home. And it kind of is that way. You can never go back and feel comfortable where you were if you're not there anymore. It's kind of like your energy has changed and modified, and you've grown and developed since then. So it's kind of like, I'm not there anymore. I'm completely somewhere else in my energy. Changes can happen very slowly, or they can happen instantly. And a lot of times when they happen instantly, you realize like it's been happening for a while, and then all of a sudden it's like, there's the break, there's the boom, here we go. And so that can really kind of come over a period of time. Like I said, a lot of times when I looked at it, it was happening for weeks, and then boom, this happened. Kind of solar eclipses really tend to create new beginnings or new opportunities, and they're usually very positive and bringing out news of kind of like what's new and happening and what are the changes that you want to make. This can be kind of like this solar eclipses, you know, kind of like that regular, you know, kind of like, let's highlight this, what we want to kind of like highlight in, and bring in a brightness or a shine to it, or kind of like this amazing light energy into it. And a lot of times, like, this is going to change you forever. Like, you're never going to be able to go back to the way you were. You'll never be able to kind of like put yourself back in that container one more time. It's just not going to happen. Lunar eclipses are usually very emotional, and they will bring up usually final endings. They often make us aware of like time and how time has passed. Kind of like, oh, you know, the last time this happened, or when my parents got a divorce, I was this age. They're going to bring up that super emotional stuff. When this happened, this was going on. A full lunar eclipse is always a very emotional time. It brings up really strong dreams, strong memories from the past, and really can have things kind of like surface that you might not have been like, wow, this is when I connected it to this, but it can bring up those dreams very easily. So it's kind of like, wow, I know, I was amazed. Next, let's go into the eclipse energies. Are kind of like a series, and they're almost like a string with beads on it. So it's kind of like strung together. And each eclipse family will continue your personal decisions, kind of giving you that, pushing you forward, bringing in like new, better energy, new, better insights into what's going on, and kind of bringing you to a new level in what's going on with you. Then when we kind of evolve and change, it's kind of like we look back at that and we're like, wow, this is when all of this happened. So it's one of those, because we have so many eclipses in that same sign. Like I said, it happens usually 18 to 24 months. They're in the same sign. And we start looking at those and like, wow, all of this was happening for me to make these amazingly huge changes in my life. So it's kind of like, I know. It's kind of information that can like bring in some major, massive changes over that time. So in that 18 months to 24 months, kind of bringing in some big changes for you in that time frame. And a lot of times, like when you look at it, each eclipse is almost like a piece of the puzzle. So I made this change during this eclipse, and this change during this eclipse, and this change. And when you put them all together, it really does make a puzzle. It kind of gives you a picture of like what you've changed or what you've done. So it's kind of really like, interesting. kind of the next one is eclipses can bring in random events that you would never expect. This could be things like completely out of like the norm, like, wow, I never would have thought about this. It could bring in people signing changes, signing record deals or video deals, or now they're going to have their own segment. Now they're going to be on TV or whatever else. Like, that's what I mean, like out of the blue, like, oh my gosh, they just call you up and be like, hey, are you interested in doing this? And you're like, okay, I would have never thought of this, or I didn't think I was ready for this part, and here it is, like, boom, in my lap. Usually these are kind of triggered from outside events, like they might have heard from a friend of a friend of a friend that you were a great whatever it is, a great architect, and now you're going to have your own show, or you're a great designer, and then all of a sudden you're going to be featured on a show or something like that. These are kind of like those weird things, not anything that you necessarily did. It's one of those, it's triggered by other people. So you can kind of really look at that energy a lot differently of like, wow, I didn't realize this was going to change. So that can kind of give you some changes like straight to right in front of you, kind of like right in front of you, these changes out of the blue kind of just like jump in at you. Like I said, if you really look back at the old eclipses, you'll see when people did like record deals close to that time frame, big deals, big signing events, that sort of thing. And so you're kind of like, wow, this is really interesting. So it's kind of like, wow, a lot of news happens in and around like that first couple of weeks after an eclipse happens. Sometimes usually up to the week before, because everything is getting in alignment so that energy starts in advance. Kind of the next one is eclipses can really speed things up for you and kind of give you a sense of like time is speeding up. It can bring in events that we would normally assume would take like months and months and months or years and years and years to get right. And all of a sudden it's like right at you. So it kind of like, I didn't think I was ready for this part, or here it is. Or started dating, and I had a client last eclipse cycle, I started looking at this, and they had just started dating. They'd been dating a month, and then all of a sudden there was an eclipse and he proposed and they're married. And so it was kind of like, wow, this is like something like she was kind of thinking like maybe he's the one, and he was already like, boom, let's get married. So those are those big changes that kind of jump in from nowhere that really give you an amazing insight and a kind of amazing look at like, wow, these are some big kind of things. And a lot of times like it's almost like leapfrogging over some of it. So it's kind of like this super acceleration or this super leapfrog acceleration over things that you're kind of like, I had no idea. I will tell you though, one of the things that a lot of these kind of events do is they're kind of bringing up your claircognizant, that clear knowing gift that we have, and kind of like, I didn't think I was ready for this, or this knowing is kind of like something's coming up, or this kind of like this energy is coming, and then boom, it happens. So it's kind of like, wow, I didn't expect this. It's kind of one of those interesting ones. I will tell you, your being in an eclipse will change your job. I know, who knew? It's one of those, eclipses can bring like a bright light to you and kind of really show you off in a way that you were kind of like not necessarily asking to be done, but it's one of those, it's revealing the truth about who you are, how you do your work, kind of like highlighting things that are normally in the dark, but it's highlighting those aspects of like, yes, this is exactly who I am. And it can be a catalyst for making major decisions. I've also found that a lot of times, like during certain eclipses, you will have like CEOs step up in companies, step down in companies, that sort of thing. And you're kind of like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And that's what I'm saying is like all of a sudden, someone who wasn't expecting to be CEO or change positions or whatever else are now like the boss. And you're kind of like, okay, this is totally interesting. I just found that was kind of like, wow. It can help you, like really assist you to move your energy forward and kind of really look at life a little bit differently. One of the major ones is, especially in a full moon lunar eclipse, will help you see your true character of people close to you. It will give you an insight of like this huge gift. Oh my gosh, a huge gift of insight when we really see someone's true colors. Kind of, are they being shown that they're grateful, or that they care for you, or they really love you? But it's one of those, that's kind of the cool part. So someone where you're kind of like, I'm not sure if they're on my side or not. These are the people that could be showing you like their true colors during a full lunar eclipse, a full moon lunar eclipse, because I was like, it's going to highlight things, and it may come up that someone talks about like, oh, I was talking about you and they defended you, and you're like, okay, or I was saying this about you and they kind of just agreed, or whatever else, or it kind of comes out in some bizarre way, or you'll get to see it in some way of like, wow, this person is talking about me, but they're not defending me, or whatever else. And it's going to give you that great insight into your life of like, wow, I had no freaking clue this was there. And that's kind of one of those amazing the other one is kind of any message that you hear from an eclipse. A lot of times, like when you do a meditation and you connect into eclipse energy, it will almost like demand that you kind of move forward in your energy, and it's going to give you such an amazing, like these could be like insights depending on your gifts and abilities, like this sight of what's coming up next for you. It could also kind of give you this insight of these are some changes to make. It could give you kind of like this almost like push forward, like we can't go backwards, we have to go forwards, we have to keep moving this energy forward, and kind of expecting these things to kind of like really amp you up, kind of like, wow, this is amazing. Eclipses also want you to have new experiences. So keep your eyes open for what's coming up next. Like I said, they will give you that message. It's either hearing or seeing, or kind of like this intuition, like, oh my gosh, here's kind of this next level for me, this next insight into what's coming up for me. And that can be such an amazing, interesting, like, wow, I had no clue it was coming energy. So let's keep going and talking about this. So I will tell you, one of the things is kind of take notice of all of the news and signals that you're getting near an eclipse. So kind of a couple of days before to a couple of days after, you may be able to still connect into that eclipse energy, and either through meditation or just kind of taking some personal time of kind of just relaxing your energy a little bit, maybe not a full-blown meditation, but something similar, and being able to kind of get in some amazing messages from the eclipse itself. Kind of like, what are the new insights that are coming at me? What are the new changes that are coming at me? What do I need to know? Kind of like that sort of thing. And it could be that you just kind of open up to the energy, like, okay, show me a sign, show me some type of information. And it could come in from anything from watching a commercial, a news clip, hearing someone else's like secret gossip, or anything else. It could be like this weird kind of like, okay, someone's going to tell you something, or you're going to hear something, and you're kind of like, wow, this is really kind of changing the way I'm thinking. And that's kind of that eclipse energy of kind of like, let's keep going. I will tell you that it will also kind of make kind of like what you're hearing during this time frame really, really a must hear. So when you're really around an eclipse, even if it's not your sign of an eclipse, make sure you're really listening as things are changing, and kind of do some investigation. Like if it's gossip, like who said it? Let me go back to that person and let me talk to them. Don't ignore it, and don't kind of like sweep it under the rug. Like, it's not a big deal. It's one of those like really take note of this energy. It can be like, wow, this is really cool. I will tell you that it's one of those, as the eclipses come by, it's one of those, sometimes we are able to kind of head off some difficulties, or kind of like some problems or some issues that could be coming up if we're paying attention to the signs. So make sure that you're kind of keeping track of that eclipse energy in that sign. Now, I will tell you, this one's kind of like, I was like, really? One of the things is, the next one is kind of really understanding if the eclipse is in the sign that you are, make sure that you're keeping track of your health. These can end up being like some pitfalls of energy. Sometimes it can be, even if the eclipse happens like 1 month and literally 6 months prior we had an eclipse, so you can kind of like keep track of that. So it's kind of like really that energy is still in play, and it may just take time for it to all come up. Now, I will tell you too, it may come up with some things that your health issues or things are coming to coming up so they can be healed or worked on. So don't just think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get sick. It's not that. It's one of those, it's coming up so you can ask new questions or think about it differently, or now I'm having this, so maybe I don't have this, maybe I have something else. This can come up in some very interesting ways of bringing you this much easier, much more calm way of kind of like understanding your health issues. And a lot of times, like I said, it can bring it to a close as well. I thought I had this and now that's coming to a close, and now I realize I have this and it's not as bad, or it's easier, or it's not as like I have to go to the doctor all the time or whatever it is. This can bring in some stuff, and a lot of times it can also just bring in a complete healing. You may hear something during the eclipse energy of like, try this, and you try a new vitamin that you've never tried before, and all of a sudden it's completely working and you're feeling much better. So it's kind of one of those like, yes, let's bring in that energy. Kind of the next ones is kind of like really thinking about kind of unexpected changes or directions, and assuming that the sun and the moon and the planets around are really kind of like pushing you in some amazing ways to kind of push you out of like your comfort zone, pushing you in some interesting areas, kind of energy. And a lot of times people will say that like a solar eclipse has very prominent male energy, and so it may mean some changes with males around your life. So kind of like if there's a huge solar eclipse of having some male energies change around you, that could be an ending of an old relationship and opening up to a new one eventually. This could also be, like your kids moving on, that sort of thing, but it's going to be primarily male energy. And this could also be like your boss is leaving, who's a male, and opens up to, that position for a female. This could be anything, kind of like your husband, father, grandfather, kind of like males in your life, clients, male friends, that sort of thing, kind of making some changes in that area, or kind of like highlighting them making some big changes in their life. Now, I will say kind of the really one that I thought was really interesting is the lunar eclipses are all about like that female energy. And this can kind of bring in a lot of changes with females. And this can be things from like moving out of your parents' home and you're a female, getting married, or kind of like literally buying my own house, or making these huge changes. Your relationships will be changing because they're changing their outlook, and so it's not necessarily bad. It's going to be bringing in like some other energy in there, but like I said, solar eclipses are usually like changes with males, and then lunar eclipses are usually changes with females, and this is usually like something big. This could be like your wife, your mom, your grandmother, your female boss, business associates, female friends, that sort of thing. Some big changes in and around women, and this can be in a great way of kind of just leading to some different changes, some different actions being taken. And like I said, it will change your relationship because now they're changed. They've changed how they're dealing with things, or they've changed how they're living their life, and so that can bring in some amazing changes. I will tell you that kind of one of the things that the things that I found most people talking about that I thought was like number one, like put a little asterisk next to this, like boom, this is something. When there is an eclipse, a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, make sure that you have some room on your calendar, that you just like, instead of like booking people back to back, or kind of one event to the next event to the next event, or I do have a few of those people that like have a full plate, and if something fell off and one thing fell off, they put 2 or 3 things in its place. This is not the time to do that. This is the time to kind of pull that energy back and kind of take it a little bit easier. Give yourself a little bit of break on your calendar, no matter who you are or what's going on. Allow yourself a little bit more space, a little bit more, oh my gosh, I don't have to do that, like be constantly going. Give myself a chance to do some eclipse meditations, taking some time to myself. What do I want to bring in? How do I want to make some changes? How do I want this relationship to change or modify? And a lot of times, like just giving the eclipse energy a chance to make some changes. And I will tell you, that's kind of one of those cool parts is, if you can, making sure that you are allowing that to kind of like have some time on your calendar, giving yourself a little bit kind of more space during that time frame. And I would say a good couple of days before to a couple of days after can really give you a great insight, and can also help you kind of just get in touch with the eclipse energy itself. That can be something like, yes, amazing. I really think that kind of one of the things that I came away with is realizing this is all happening for your good. It may not seem like that at all. It may seem like just completely overwhelming, like I can't believe this is all changing, or all of these changes are happening at the same time. But realize these changes are for you. These upgrades are for you. These changes are for you to make upgrades and changes in your life. And like I said, it comes every 7 to 8 years and lasts for about 2 years. And these are some amazing changes in your life that you can connect into, that you can make some like, yes, I've made it. I've made these changes. I think that's kind of the cool part about this. So I think that's something to kind of realize. These changes are all coming in. They may not always seem like, yay, happy at the time, but I guarantee you they're going to be happy on the other end. It is amazing how eclipse energy comes in to change us in some amazing ways. I thank you so much for joining me today, and I know that we'll be talking again soon.